A professor in JNU, this school only. He was a professor in Center for Russian and Central Asian Studies. And he was a student. He has been a student of JNU. He did his PhD from JNU. And before that, he was a student of BHU. And before that, he was basically a victim of caste system, which we have talked about. And you might have read his autobiography, Murdaya and Manikarnika, and in those autobiography, he has really given everything in the reality of Indian society, the caste atrocity, the basically feudal system in village and all, how people of particular caste are treated worse than animals and all. So no need of repeating all this. But about Professor Tulsiram, 2-3 things are necessary, and that Professor Tulsiram was a philosopher of basically Buddhist philosopher, as well as he was a philosopher of Marxism, and at the same time was a Dalit activist as a scholar. So all in 3 in 1. So that way he had altogether a different thinking about the society, the politics, and what are the challenges of Dalit leadership in pursuing this career politics and all. And that's why he has narrated in so many writings and speeches. He has talked a lot about the pathetic situation of Dalit and how, the ways their pitiable situation has to be ameliorated or improved and all. So being a communist, he didn't have a typical communist. He didn't believe in this is the only class. It's not a caste. As if there is no caste. In Indian society, he believes caste as well as class is there. So let us talk about it. And he wanted to have a coordination between these two. So it is not, and it was like basically it was not like that many typical communists. At the same time, he was anti caste, and he took Dalit leadership who was opportunist, that only Dalits politics or the advancement or the pitiable situation of Dalit will not be improved only through politics. Social movement has to be there, and for that he advocated. He talked to the people, like, let us go to the ground, let us work for the people who are innocent and all. So not only academics, but academy has to be practiced in the people, among the people and all. So, and then some people, the Dalit particularly, who criticize people like Gandhi, he was not anti-Gandhi, but at the same time he was not in favor of Gandhi's philosophy that Varna system is supernatural thing or something that. So he was very critical about that. Despite of that, despite of his critic, he was loved by every section of society, and that is the basically his achievement. I just wanted to give this introduction about Professor Tulsiram, because a role model has to be there. He is a person who has continued the saga or the heritage which was started during Bhakti movement. Kabir, Raidas, Chokha, and again you have talked about the Periyar in Tamilnadu, Narayan Gunduri in Kerala, and Phule in Maharashtra, Dr. Ambedkar again from Maharashtra. He was a torch bearer, or in the sense he was a bearer of the battle to the society, and through his writings, through his speech, through his interaction with the student, teachers, and people, common people. He has been very truthful about that. So this is the brief background, and he also criticized a leader like Mayawati when Mayawati was worshipping uh, some basically fictitious god, and actually it was basically he said कि दलित मूवमेंट को ब्राह्मणवादी के ये पाखंडवादी चीजों में लपेट लेंगी. मतलब he was critical. It was not that it was a very scholastic intervention about the Dalit politics, and here Dalit also criticized him as well as similarly the so-called upper caste or mainstream. When at the last time, when he, in the last phase of his life, he joined Congress, and I know one incident. Mrs. Sonia Gandhi, during Kumbh in Allahabad, she was asked by the leaders, Congress leader, to have a dip in the Ganga, and the Ganga river was very dirty that time because lakhs of people were having dips in that, and that she was forced to have a dip. एक डुबकी मारने के लिए उनको तैयार किया गया, उनको जबरदस्ती गंदा पानी में डुबकी जाए. Then he was very critical. Professor Tulsi Ram was being a member of not a member, but he was sympathizer of Congress party. He criticized this act of so-called Brahminical follower of Congress, and then also he was like what you got get Rajiv Gandhi Fellowship or other fellowship of UGC. He was basically the concept was perceived by him way back in 2000, more than 2004, and he was a founder member of that kind of scholarship. These are the things.
IAS online served as an IAS officer, earned a big reputation in whichever district he went. And before he went to that district, his name was given. So that way he has been very practical, very social, and he will be narrating, he will be telling about his own experience. And now he has line politics and what are the challenges in politics we will be talking about this experience. Just I'm giving a brief introduction because we are waiting for the other speakers. So bear with me, and sorry, I never expected that this much gathering will come here, and that's why the one which is bigger one, our colleagues are having classes there. Otherwise, the capacity of that hall is more than 100 students. So you have to just this is a JNU because you get sick or not, you just fly down. So we are. Thank you.
For having.
Sir, better you sit as well.
Okay. For having organized. It's a very nice setting, in fact. I'm bored of all those formal settings. So I'll try to keep myself as short as possible and also as non-boring as possible, so that we can ask and answer some questions. I'm not a big, I don't like giving gyan because I don't think there is any gyan. And I have sat in many lectures like this. By the time the lecture ends, the main questions are lost. So I'm not going to give all that. I'm just going to have a small correction with what Professor said, that Congress didn't look for me, I looked for Congress. And I myself went and introduced myself and joined. It was not, and also it was not as if I was that popular. Okay, I was a decent chap and I could do some okay work. So that's it. My background is this. So the topic today is about the future of Dalit and Adiwasi politics. It's always a big problem to come and talk in a university because you know the theory. I can't argue with you on theory. But where I come from, the only advantage I have was the last around 15 years I have seen a lot of people. Every day would be starting with, the morning with 100 people, ending with 200 people. So that is the only advantage that I have. And the second experience I have is in elections. I was the campaign manager for Congress for the last, starting from Karnataka election to Rajasthan and to this national election. I was the campaign manager of the war room head. And that's how I work with Surendra. And that is another area where I can also give you experiences about that. And the last thing is, now I have just moved into this space, Parliament, which is big for me also, and try to understand stuff. Other than that, in 2009 I resigned in protest. The time when this Article 370 was abrogated, there were 2 officers who resigned in protest, and there is this legacy of IAS officers resigning, and there is something very bad happening. So I resigned in protest when I was the sitting DM from Bangalore, and from there my journey in social movements and politics, mainstream politics, started. In fact, the first space I came, after I resigned, was JNU. And I had to come to understand everything. By this time, the student protest had already started, and many of our colleagues were here. So that's the background I have, and the touch I have with JNUs from that time. Like, having said this, I'm going to just, for 10-15 minutes, not even 15 minutes, 10 minutes, talk about what is right now happening in my understanding, and how the whole Dalit politics is now going to be framed within the whole system. Right, and it's going to come from a very, very practical and a very, my colleague has come. So, on behalf of you, I would welcome Professor Vivek sir and Bimol ji. So we're just starting off informally. I thought there's nothing formal about this whole thing. So I told them that can I proceed, or is there a secret form? Okay, so I would just 10 minutes tell you, in my opinion, what is exactly my understanding of what's happening, and then where Dalit politics is going to move further. So, please. And all of that is going to come from my experience in how I saw political space. So my focus on what was happening started in 2002 when there was Godhra riots. That time I was preparing for civil service, and this whole riots is a new thing for me, from a guy from South India, which is actively happening, and riots went on for 5 to 6 days continuously. So I didn't understand quite how it went on. And then as we prepare for civil service, and then I came, one thing was very clear, that there was a complacency from administration, and then for me to understand how administration be complacent on a riot, or even sometimes actively participate, is a big question, because I didn't understand that part. So then I started understanding what is the politics behind this, what is the politics behind these riots and social unrest and communalism and stuff. Then I started understanding different political models which have been there already. Until then I had no idea. When I started reading into history, I started understanding that there were different historical instances when situations like this came up, right? Now, that's when I got to understand what is populism, what is fascism, what is politics bordering fascism and stuff like that, right? So there are complex theories about all these things, but from my side it's very simple.
for me, after reading so many things about fascism and stuff, I got to understand one thing, that it is a method to win power. That's all. Just like a coup attempt where you use power to physical force to win power, you now use a certain socio-psychological system to get elected in an election. In fact, to simplify it further, if in a general election two candidates go and ask for votes, it's going to be 50-50 probability that we'll win. And if I go and ask that please vote for me, but then there is one more formula, that I do this 80-20 politics. I go to this 20% of people and then start telling that this 80% is the real problem and you have to be really afraid of them. The only way that you can control them is elect me. There is a possibility this 80%, go to 80% and talk about this 20%. There is a possibility there is a 60% vote will come to me. If I fear them, if I give this fear in a much bigger way, probably 70% of vote might also come to me. So all fascist forces have come through election and democratic processes. But the point is, what do they do after coming to power? Now, once you find this formula and then you come to power, there is a certain thing, a certain way in which you operate, right? Like very clear indicators. The first thing will be attack on universities, where questions and new things will come up. And this happened in this university also. And then institutions, democratic institutions will be brought down. Then there will be selective laws made, many things. So for me, all that was happening right in front of my eyes. And then I had to get out of what I was doing as a civil servant to get into the political fight so that we could somehow fight this. So in 2019, when I resigned, this was the fear in me that will we be able to fight this as a country? And then when I came out and started moving around, I thought it will be 3 years that we really need to work on these things. And I didn't believe in any political party, to be very frank, that they will be able to fight this. And I always thought it is only the social and civil movements which will be fighting it. And there was an immediately after that 370 got abrogated, I resigned. One of my colleagues also resigned. And then came this NRCCA, another classic textbook registration of citizens, textbook fascist structure. And then that required a lot of explanation. So we went around the country explaining things and stuff. There was a lot of resistance movements which started with that. Then those movements were exactly which taught me that there is a lot of fight in this country left. After which the government, of course all of you know the protest, the Shaheen Bagh protest and everything. I was always apprehensive of violence because the only solution or only answer that fascist forces always had against civil movements was violence. And that violence is not government perpetuating violence, but letting people perpetuate between themselves. That's a much more difficult situation. Tomorrow some of you might be in civil service. If there is a situation where they fight against you, it's not a problem. But if they fight against themselves, it's a huge problem. Because you can't control. There's no way in which any administration can control. So that politics will bring that fight into society. So I was apprehensive about that, and I was apprehensive it will happen someday. And it happened in Delhi. And when it happened, we were all silent, could not do much. Innocents were getting killed, and from both sides. That's when I realized, was before going to this fight on the ground, one needs to fight them in a political way. That is the reason why I myself went to a political party, Congress, joined Congress, and since then I have been working with Congress. This is the short background of what my mentality was, because every time I come, that's the question everybody asks, why did you resign? So I thought I'll clear this up. Now coming to the main topic about Dalit situation and Dalit politics. I'm a first generation Dalit from an untouchable community in South India. My father was the generation which took up all the poison and then never let me try to get. I think many of you would relate to that. Never let me get near or get affected by. He tried to always protect me from that. But then it can't be very easily protected. But still, that was the idea. But for me, Dalit politics now, in fact, the parties which had come earlier, including RPI, Vidudalai Chirutegal, many other political parties which took the Dalit base, did a tremendous job in actually pushing up the political line. But right now, what I feel is that the aspirations of the Dalit community, so now, right from a point where you had to fight for your rights, now the Dalit community is also slowly moving towards being aspirational. That is a small twist which is happening. And I think in the future, Dalit politics should also cater to that. Not only from the rights perspective, not only from the delivering justice perspective, but also towards how you cater to these aspirations of the next generation Dalit. That is one small change that I see, which is very important. Another thing that majorly I see is also the difference between fighting caste and fighting Brahmanism. There are two different aspects. Like if you take Tamilnadu for instance, people will talk about Periyar movement and many other things. They look like anti-casteist, but it is not anti-casteist. It might have been anti-Brahminical, but I don't think to a large extent we have fought caste. What Babasaheb Ambedkar told about annihilation of caste was never the central plank of any politics. Yes, people have fought for Dalit rights or people have fought against Brahminism, but we have really not understood caste is what I feel. And it's very simple if you read Babasaheb, that one paper of annihilation of caste or his paper in Columbia University is more than enough to understand different elements of caste. And caste is a living reality of this country. In fact, we can talk a lot about parties which support communalism and all that. I think all that is bullshit. There's no communalism is there. I would not say because I'm a South Indian I can say that, but North India it is a reality. But a bigger reality in India is caste. In fact, this is the red herring. Now, even in this majoritarianism that we are going through, I think India is the only country where we have fake majoritarianism. In every majoritarian country, the majority gets an undue advantage and the minority gets a raw deal. That's how it is. You take Italy, Germany, wherever. The Aryans used to get a great deal and that Jews used to be persecuted. India is the only country where everything is done in the name of a majority, but the goodness of majority is not the real reason. The real reason is to come to power. In fact, on the contrary, it is to get the improvements or whatever has happened in the last 50 years back to the old stage is the main plank of this majoritarianism. So I keep very famously calling we are the most fakest. Even in this majoritarianism, we are the fake. So very simple example is this caste census. Now we have been asking for caste census, right? Now, if caste census comes, which community or in religious community will benefit? It's not going to be the Muslims. It's obviously going to be the Hindu community. And the vast majority within the Hindu community, which is the MBC, OBC, SC, ST, who are going to benefit. But why would somebody object to it? Somebody would object to it provided they don't agree with this, right? Which means it's very clear the majoritarianism itself in India is very fake. That is my theory that this is a heavily casteist society where even in a political realm we have not fought caste. we have used for politicking, but annihilation of caste has never been a plank on which active work has happened. And I don't think, personally, I don't think it can come with a lot of anger or fight. Yes, we need to fight when injustice happens, and that's the reality of many of us. But I also feel a lot of change might come with understanding. So one needs to talk about what is caste. How is it different from class? How is it different from other hierarchies? Why is caste so problematic? So these aspects are what one needs to understand and one needs to talk about and really move towards a casteless society. If we don't try to annihilate caste, no matter where you are born and what category you come from, I don't think we are going to improve in any way. In fact, I think India has classic, indications of this caste society. For example, we don't innovate at all. We do a lot of theory stuff, but we never innovate. I don't think we will ever innovate if we had caste, because दिमाग में सोचने का एक कैटेगरी है, हाथ में काम करने का कैटेगरी, दोनों ज्वाइन ही नहीं करेंगे. You will never develop this synergy, and for so many reasons, for many years, that's the reason I think we have not innovated in any way. So I think the Dalit politics for the future is one, it has to become or cater to the aspirational indicators of the society. It has to talk about those things. Now Dalit politics is one part of the major politics, and I think that's true of major politics also, that if we don't understand the aspiration of this generation, I think we are not going to do good in politics. Maybe any party, especially Dalit parties, we need to understand the importance of standing against injustice and also catering to the aspirational attitude of the society. Second thing is that annihilation of caste is an important plank, and we need to talk about it, we need to understand it, and that's not just anti-Brahmanism, and that's not just fighting for Dalits. It's a bigger plank, and I think this country and your generation is ready to do it in a great way. As Baba Sahib said, caste is just a notional thing, If you understand it in 5 minutes, it's not a brick wall where you have to sit and break it. But it's deeply ingrained in all of us. We may not realize it, but it is deeply ingrained. That's the problem with it. And there is no exit route. Everybody knows this. There's no exit route. We have to get out of this. So if we don't take caste as the central plank and work on it, not just talk about, today the talk is all about different things, but anything you take and you go underneath and see what is the hierarchy which is driving it, it will be caste. Right from our marriages to our politics to everything, it is caste. That is why we cannot even become a majoritarian society. That's good in a way, because we can never be a real majoritarian society, because there will be always this fighting between different castes, right? So this is what I think is going to happen, or how we should proceed in the future. But largely, I also feel politics should change in a major way. And one main problem that I see is this aversion towards mainstream politics. For the last 60-70 years, we have developed an aversion towards this, especially my generations, previous generation, my parents. They never wanted us to go anywhere near politics. Become an IAS officer or a journalist or whatever, but never go into mainstream politics, because they felt it was very absolutely horrendous to think about it. They were right, because it had its nature. But the problem is now that's become a huge problem for all of us, because there's absolutely nobody coming inside. And then when nobody comes inside, then what happens? The void is captured by many other people. So I think this aversion towards mainstream politics has to change, and it is not such very bad place now. Things are changing. The organizations have made themselves to be like that, so that you don't come inside. But now I think those things are changing, and think people like, at least I can talk about, some parties who are moving forward to bring in more energy and more. And I also feel for you, it is an investment For us, it's just probably, we have finished but our politics is going to actually affect you. What are we going to peddle as politics is going to affect you. And hence, you are the most invested in this room. And I also feel that you should take it up in your hand to pressurize people like us to do the right kind of politics. Otherwise, your future will be in a very difficult situation. Now, violence is knocking our door, no matter what is the reason, but it is knocking our door in every other areas. So we need to, I will use this word, reclaim the space. Reclaim the political space is what I think we all have to do. And, mainstream politics is not contesting elections. Please don't have this idea that I have to contest election and then I don't have money and all. It is not contesting elections. That is a different game altogether, even inside mainstream politics. So reclaiming the political space and also doing political, changing that for the future is, I think, a broad plank on which even Dalit politics will have to work on. I'm not going to talk about Adivasi politics because I am not very clear with this, but that's an entirely separate discussion. It needs Rajkumar and Bimolji to do about that. But as far as Dalit politics is there, I can be very clear that annihilation of caste is something which we have to ask for and us to understand and educate and move forward in this direction. Thanks a lot. Later when there is some questions, I'll try and come in.